Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX agency, and welcome to Tuesday Office Hours Ask Us Anything. This one's going to have special guest Larry Marine, who will be joining us just momentarily. But before I start, I'd like to ask the audience a question. And if you're watching this later, maybe comment in the YouTube comments. I am struggling a bit with userinterviews.com, and I'm wondering if anyone has a recommendation for a panel service that has a large number of people in North America that will preferably allow me to send people to my external survey rather than forcing me to build a survey in their system. Yes, I will pay for panel people, but User Interviews wants you to use their survey, and that's causing a bit of a car crash for me for the second time. So I am open to other ideas. And on that note, let's bring in Larry, who will tell you of his endless greatness. Larry, welcome. Tell everybody who the heck you are.
So I've been a UX practitioner, researcher mostly, and designer since I graduated from Don Norman's cognitive science program back at UCSD. I was fortunate enough to be in his first graduating class. And he basically was the one that told me, Larry, go out and be a consultant and try to get people to understand what we do. So I've been doing that ever since. That was back in 1990. So I've got a few years experience.
That's right, just a few. You're ready for mid-level. I think we can offer you a mid-level job at $30 an hour, sir.
Ooh, a raise.
So as people are coming in, and of course, everybody, this is Office Hours Ask Us Anything. We'll be here about an hour, and you can ask questions to one or both of us. And those questions can be thrown into the YouTube chat room. Don't forget to subscribe. The LinkedIn chat, or we also have above my head the eternal link, deltacx.link/ask. And that one's good 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I'll just answer it in the next one if you missed this one. So we did get a question ahead of time, and in fact, I just realized I forgot to open one of my many windows for fielding questions. So I will do that while you answer the first question. And the first question came in anonymously, and it says, what would you say are the biggest benefits to becoming a UX contractor or freelancer versus working in-house?
That's a good question. That's a real good question. I was a freelancer for a long time. And I think one of the benefits is you have control of your own time. So you could dedicate time to client work at certain times. You can dedicate time to learning new techniques on your own, and make sure that your learning schedule fits with the opportunities that are out there, conferences, seminars, webinars, things like that. Plus, you have an objectivity that really benefits the project. If you're in-house and you're stuck with the same project over and over again, you basically start going down rabbit holes without realizing it. There are internal biases that kind of color your perception of the users and the tasks and the product and everything. And it seems that in-house projects take longer, whereas contract or freelance projects, by definition, the client wants you done quicker. And so, but when you come into them, you're tabula rasa. You don't have any predisposed, predictions about how users are going to act or anything like that. And so you see things that the in-house team doesn't see. I've worked with some in-house teams before, and it was really, really insightful to bounce off my observations and their observations. And it was a case of 1 + 1 = 3. So because we found new things. But your objectivity is probably your greatest asset as a contractor or a freelancer.
And can you think of other benefits for you? I mean, the objectivity is a benefit for you and for the worker, but do you think there are benefits to me, like time balance or how much money I can charge, anything like that?
How much money you can charge isn't up to you at all. When you think about it, it's up to the market. and what the clients will bear. A lot of times, you go in and you say, my fee is X, and their first reaction is X divided by 2. So there's some negotiating. Sound familiar, Debbie? So,
Never.
but the work-life balance is very comfortable. But the drawback to being a contractor or freelancer is, as I like to say, as a freelancer, you spend 80% of your time working for your client and the other 80% looking for the next one. So there's a lot of additional work that you're not paid for right away. You have to build up a pipeline of projects and clients, and that takes years. So there's that that liability. But the benefit of being able to manage your own time, and if you're a morning person, like I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and there are times when I got up and I was so energized, I would work for like 3-4 hours before breakfast and get a day's worth of work done. No interruptions, no emails, no phone calls. But yes, the work-life balance thing is a definite benefit. But there are times when the client demands certain results and you just have to put things off, and you are under the gun to get it done.
Very true. Agree with everything. We have a fun question from Kayleen, who sounds like she'd like to know a little bit more about your background. How did Larry get to learn from Don Norman? She doesn't sound like that, but I'm giving her that overdone drama.
So I spent 6 years in the Navy and 10 years as a contractor for the Navy. And at the end of that 10 years, I decided to go to college, use my GI Bill. And while I was in the Navy, I was a computer tech. And one of the things I learned or observed was how people struggled with technology. And I found it, beneficial for me to help train some of the people on how to use the system that we were using. And so I started thinking more about, user psychology. I even took a class on a ship on psychology and was really interested in that. So started going to college, and I started with a double major of computer science and psychology. And interesting story. There was this young woman in my psychology class, and so we met for coffee one day, and she told me about not Don Norman, but this program that was a combination of psychology and computer science that was just starting up at UCSD. I was actually going to a community college for my lower division stuff. And so I went over and checked that out and immediately switched over to UCSD. The interesting thing is that curriculum was so new that it wasn't yet accredited. We took it on faith that they could get the program accredited by the time we graduated. So for 2.5, 3 years, it was like, are we going to be able to graduate? Are we going to have to take additional classes? And it wasn't until middle of the last year that we found out that every class that we had taken was accepted and accredited by the regents of the University of California. And I got to my classmates were incredible. That's all I have to say. I learned with the best and from the best. Not only Don Norman, but Ed Hutchins, Jaime Pineda, Marty Serino. I mean, David Kirsch, Jeff Elman. The list goes on. And my classmates, we would get together because we were such a new curriculum. There were no other people to talk to. It was just us. And it was great. And Don Norman was he was present. He was engaged. He didn't just, send off a graduate student to run the class. He was there. So I had him for about a half a dozen classes.
Wonderful.
And, it was awesome.
That is awesome. That's unbelievable. Wow. Bill is actually posting a question right now on the office hours I did this morning. I don't know if he knows we're here right now, but I'm going to ask you his question and I'll type it into the
Okay.
stuff. And I can only see part of it because of LinkedIn's messed up system. Hold on, let me see. Here it is. How do you handle the crossover of product management roles and UX roles? Because there is crossover and competing priorities.
Well, working on 250, 300 projects for different clients over the years, I learned a lot about product management. I even took a product management curriculum and ended up getting certified as a product manager. So I understand their perspective. They bring that business perspective to the table that UXers don't really learn in school, but need to learn as they start working in projects, within companies. And as a freelancer, getting back to our first question, as a freelancer, you really need to understand the business priorities. And one of the things I learned was to engage them in the process, but not engage them from a UX perspective, engage them from that product management perspective. And so they understand why they're there. They're there to talk about the business aspect of a product, or a marketing aspect, or even the sales channel aspect of it. And so when I do my best work, I have what I call a priority matrix. And it's basically a prioritization table to understand the needs of the user, the objectives of the business and marketing, and the feasibility of the technology. And the product managers understand that business and marketing aspect of it well enough to be able to help prioritize it. But when they see the UX priorities, that's when they start learning more about UX. And so you end up creating this handshake, not so much a crossover, but at least a handshaking, that you understand what they're talking about and they understand what you're talking about. And the same holds true for the development team also. They start learning why there are certain priorities, why business is interested in this, why the users are interested in this, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a collaborative effort.
Great, thank you. I'm going to jump to the next question. How do I get better at accepting criticism?
Well, first off, number one rule in UX is you're never going to get it right. There's always going to be something wrong with whatever you're doing. And just accept the fact that it's not going to be perfect. And all you're doing is you're putting up ideas to help you generate more ideas. So it's not really criticism, it's just idea generation. Now, if somebody's making a personal attack on it, that's one thing. But one of the things I found is always refer to the object, the design, never to the person who designed it. Don't say you designed this poorly. You say the design has some elements that need, discussion. So depersonalize the discussion, focus on the design, and that gets other people to focus on the design also. So that's how you can help kind of deflect some of the personal criticism. And don't take it personally. It's just design.
I like to say we can't take it personally even when it's meant personally. That's where resilience comes in. We've got a question from Teresa who says, what questions would you pose to a prospective UXD employer while in a Zoom interview?
I always like to find out how engaged they are with real UX, and are they familiar with user-centered design, UX principles, or are they attracted to the shiny objects? So ask a series of questions, not just one question, but a series of questions that help illustrate what their understanding is and what their tolerance level for real UX is. One extreme is you've heard people tell stories about, they were interviewing and talking about doing some user research. Oh, we don't do user research. We just sit in a conference room. Well, that's a dead giveaway, but you're not always going to get that. What you may get is something like, well, we do focus groups. Well, focus groups are not really user experience research. They're more of a marketing research tool. So that should give you some indication. So, really just try to ask questions that gauge how accepting the potential employer is to real UX processes being introduced. Now, if they say they have processes and they're going to stick with them, and you don't like the processes, just move on. You're not going to change that their opinion of anything.
That's fair. And I would add quickly to that that I think it's fair to ask a hiring manager or potential employer, what's your UX process? What do you tend to do in what order? How much time and budget do you normally give to research? Is research allowed to thoroughly research things, and what is done with their findings or insights or suggestions? I think these are all fair questions. Larry?
You reminded me of something else too. One of the questions I like to ask is how much time and budget do they allocate to professional development? Going to conferences, webinars, seminars, things like that. And if they're not willing to spend money on professional development, it's going to be an uphill battle. So, that's usually a red flag as well.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting question too. And of course, if anyone is new to UX, which I didn't think Teresa was, but if anyone's newer to UX, you usually want to ask about the environment. A lot of people who are newer to UX expect to get mentoring and coaching, but many companies aren't set up to mentor or coach you at all. They're never going to review
Good
your
point.
work. They're going to throw you in the deep end. So if you are newer to UX, you probably want to ask some questions about any mentoring or coaching or things like that.
Ask about who the team is. Yeah, ask about who the team is. If there's a senior UXer on staff, find out about them, what their background is. If they're just a junior in sheep's clothing, that's not going to help you much with respect to mentoring. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and also find other people who work on that team or in that department. Look them up on LinkedIn and check out their backgrounds a little bit. Sometimes I write to these people and say, hey, you worked there. Or sometimes I look for the people who quit that company and say, are you comfortable saying, because you never know if someone liked working there but just found something different or better, or they really hated working there and you might want the warning.
A technique that I use with clients, not so much employers, is I'll talk poorly about their product. Like, well, I notice is this problem, and I'll gauge what their reaction is. And I've had potential clients that got real defensive, and I realized that's not going to work.
Yeah, good point also. Yeah, if they're not able to see some of the faults, flaws, issues with some of their current product, then it's probably a culture of CYA, as they say, cover your ass. So don't forget, this is Office Hours Ask Us Anything. Send in those questions. You can send them through deltacx.link/ask, which will come in anonymously if you'd like, or I am watching the LinkedIn and YouTube chat. We've got a YouTube question from Elijah. It sounds like Elijah says we're in the process of answering it. Let's see. What are some of those questions? How do I know what's a good question and answer and what's not? Elijah says, as a beginner, it's hard to know what to ask or how to know what a good answer is. I'll put that one up. So maybe that's a good kind of follow-up to that question, especially for our juniors when they're asking these questions. What answers do we want to look for?
Oh, I don't. It's been so long since I was a junior UXer. I can't remember what I don't remember what I didn't know.
Don't even know what I don't even know.
Yeah, but I think if you have some doubt in your mind as a junior, as a beginning UXer, and you have some doubt into what the answer that you just heard, put it this way, the end of the spectrum is Don Norman answering that question for you, right? You ask them about the process and then work your way backwards. You got Don Norman, and then if the answers that manager gives are closer to, what junior people might answer, then that's an uphill battle. But I think if you get names of people on the team and you can look up their background, like Debbie said, that should give you a fair idea. How well is their product doing? If they have a large team and their product stinks, guess what? You're not going to fix that problem.
Yeah, I mean, when I worked at Macy's, we had 45 people in our UX department, and we were constantly being written up as a terrible company with terrible everything, other than we had an app some people liked, and so that was a bit of a tough spot. But let me try to answer Elijah's question a little bit more directly, because I have a lot of people I'm mentoring and coaching right now, so I often hear stories of what people are hearing back in these interviews. So this is secondhand. But I would say one thing that it sounds like some people are answering to, like, what's your UX process, or how do you use research and things? Sometimes you will hear, oh, we ship really fast. We release stuff, we ship fast, we release stuff really fast, and then we learn later if people liked it. I don't think that's a great UX process. I know that's something a lot of engineers seem to like, even though I find it wasteful. I think that's going to be a bad sign, because I think anybody who answers that question with speed, anything that sounds like speed over quality, speed over customers or users, is probably a place most people watching this channel would be unhappy with. If you would like that environment, you probably would like some other YouTube channels. So I would say be careful of answers that talk about speed. Be careful of answers that talk about we know what the users want, or we ask them what they like. Things that just don't sound like good UX process. Sometimes I've had people say, well, I was told I won't get to talk to customers, but the business analysts do. Not a great sign. And remember, one thing that I noticed that I put into my new HR training, plug, new HR training, everybody, is that a lot of us being change agents, thank you, Elijah. He gave us a heart and a notebook. And Darren gave us a heart as well. He says, speed over quality is free-form toxicity. I found that, now I don't remember what I was saying, now forget it. I fell in love with the emojis. I got sucked in. I forgot what I was going to say. So I'm going to move to Emily's question. And if I remember, I'll throw it in later. Let me grab Emily's question. It's a little bit on the long side, and it's coming in on LinkedIn, which means I can't put it on the screen. So hopefully this will make sense. I'm a mid-level designer, and I get hit up on LinkedIn frequently for requests to be a mentor. I know I'm not ready to mentor, and I'm actively looking for mentorship. That being said, how do you find good mentorship opportunities when it's clear there is a lot of mid-level saturation in the mentorship department? Emily, we love you for that question. How do you find, so Larry, how do you find mentors was the short version.
Well, I don't know, because I was so new to this that I have been basically a senior UXer since day one, because so few people were doing this back then. I didn't really have a mentor other than Don Norman. So
not bad.
And that
not bad.
I don't think, but that doesn't really count. I mean, he was my professor, and he stays engaged with all of his students. So I wouldn't really call that searching out for a mentor. I think you can answer that question better, actually.
I will, if you don't mind. We did episode 59 on finding a mentor, but other than going into the live stream podcasts playlist here on the YouTube Delta CX channel, please subscribe. Quickly, I think a great way to find a mentor is to take somebody you admire and reach out to them and ask them if they do mentoring or coaching. To me, the difference between mentoring or coaching is free and coaching is paid. Not all of us have time to do mentoring for free. Some of us do get paid. I do some mentoring for free, and then there is some that I charge for. Right now, I'm charging $50 for a half hour or $100 American dollars for an hour. That's obviously a greatly reduced price. We are getting a smiley face from Jason, who wants to know when Don Norman will be my guest on the show. I have not made that happen, so do not know. But I think with mentors, take someone who you admire, who interests you, and reach out to them, but be prepared to tell them what your goals are. I get so many messages on LinkedIn that are like, "Dear Debbie, I like your videos, help me find a job." Hey, I can't find anybody a job right now in this climate and environment and crazy hiring universe. So that's not right. But if you have some sort of learning goal or some sort of skill level goal, then I can work with you on how we can get there. I do have deltacx.link/coaching. I don't know how to point at my own stuff. There is a free 15-minute coaching session that you can book with me. I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything for 15 minutes for free. You get one free one. If you want more than that, you do have to book the paid time. And if you want to enter this month's giveaway, deltacx.link/giveaway, I'm giving away one free coaching hour with me. So feel free to sign up for that. So mentors, reach out to people you like.
So this might be a good segue into when I post on LinkedIn, I'm trying to do it as a mentor. I'm not trying to, stir the pot or anything like that. I'm trying to give, understand the topic and give some insight in it, something usable and useful by the audience. But if you also have a specific question, you can reach out to me and I'll try to answer it. I think we all can learn a lot from mentoring, both the mentor and the mentee. So I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, me too. I try to answer short, easy questions for free, but sometimes people just want blocks of my time, or sometimes people are doing a real project, a sample project, a school or boot camp project, and they aren't getting good mentoring or coaching, and they want me to review their work. So that is available. Come talk to me. But in general, also, Emily, I would agree, no offense to you, that there's only so much a mid-level designer can mentor on because you might have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 years. You can certainly mentor or talk to people about getting that first job because you somewhat recently got that first job, in the last 2 to 5 years. So that's something you could speak to people about. But as for UX process, that's something you might still be learning or improving or perfecting or mastering. So you might feel like, gee, I'm not ready to, instruct people on observational research. So there you go. Emily says, thank you so much. Thank you, Emily. It was a neato question. We don't have any questions in the queue right now. What happened, everybody? Everyone's been saying I'm going to be there for Larry, and I have questions for Jason. You were here a few days ago, and you had a question for Larry, and now he's here. What was that question? You asked Larry. You wanted to know if Larry perceived a thing in a certain way, and now I don't remember what it was. Jason, ask your question. He's here. Oz is here
While
too.
we're waiting for Jason,
Yeah.
There was a topic that you touched on that I wanted to bring up, talking about speed. A lot of companies are all about how quickly they can get something out the door. But that raises the question of Agile. If a company is talking about their Agile design process, that's a bad sign because real UX doesn't fit all the way into Agile. You start off with doing some pre-work, your pre-sprint basically, of a couple of months of observations, task analysis, and only after you've done that can you start to divide up the time, the design effort to fit into the Agile sprints. So if they're saying, oh yeah, we do Agile UX, run Forrest, run.
Yeah, it's not a thing. And I wrote a book about it, so I can tell you there are ways that UX can look like they fit into Agile, but mostly that's going to be dual track Agile and tri-track Agile, where essentially we retain our autonomy and our authority, and we could be sprinting. We can measure our time in sprints, I think in hours or days, but sure, you want me to call it sprint, I'll call it sprint, but we still are in our own world. Teresa says, thank you. I told an interviewing manager I wasn't sure what that really is. Okay, so LinkedIn is usually 2 minutes behind us. So I try to tell people to not use pronouns like that because I don't know what you're talking about because you're probably 2 minutes behind us. So remember, everybody, know that. Be very specific. Don't use the word that. Use descriptive words. So when I see it 2 minutes later, I know what you're talking about. And hopefully you saw Oz's message too, which was super. He said, I'm asked to mentor people in Excel, and they're so vague. I want to learn Excel. It's too big. Thanks, Debbie, for mentioning have a goal. I can work with a defined objective. Exactly. Any mentoring that anybody is looking for. Oh, Teresa says it was Agile. So I told an interviewing manager I wasn't sure what Agile really is. Then you probably won't get the job, because they usually at least want you to know what Agile is. Many jobs say you must have experience in an Agile environment. So there you go. We've got a question from Yasin. Yasin says, hello, Larry. Hello, Debbie. If Larry would start all over again, getting a job in UX, how would he do it? Like learning and later on finding a job. Larry, in today's environment of crappy boot camps and crappy courses and all that, how would you try to learn UX now?
Well, as much as I don't like boot camps, I think they do offer some fundamental knowledge that may be difficult to get on your own. That's one of the things I did like about going to UCSD and studying under Don Norman. He gave us the fundamental aspects of it. But, having, 4 years versus 4 months to learn it gave us a lot better opportunity of actually learning and applying it and practicing it, which we got to do with projects. But if I was to start off today, read as much as possible to try to gain as many different perspectives as possible. The hard part nowadays, I think there are a lot of crappy books out there, and you may think you're learning something, but when you actually start applying it, you realize how thin it is and how much it falls apart. But the one thing that I recommend to a lot of people who ask the question, how do I get started in UX? I finished my boot camp. Go to as many free opportunities as possible to pick up some knowledge, like Debbie's live stream. I mean, these are great. I listen in while I'm working sometimes. And
Thank you.
But the other thing is you need practice. And the only way to get practice is to do free work for people. And where do you find people that are willing to let you do some free work? Go to these startup communities where people are trying to build a product on a shoestring. They don't have any money. They're all working on their own dime. But if you have an opportunity to talk to them for an hour and you start to build a portfolio of some of these different products that you were able to give an hour of free evaluation to, not only does it build up your portfolio, but it also builds up your knowledge. You get to practice your craft in such a way that it helps somebody, but it also helps you learn, because you develop a communication style. You learn to how to separate features and tasks and things like that. So you just go out there, find the startup community, offer your services to these startup companies, and you'd be surprised how accepting they are. And they don't know anything about UX. So you're giving them something of value and you're getting something back.
Yeah, and as for my quick answer to that, and first of all, I also recommend that if you are going to do free work, sample work, practice work, whatever, hi, Steele, then make sure you have a mentor or a coach. Otherwise, I find people are just guessing at the work. They don't know what they're getting right or wrong, and they're not leveling up. If I play tennis against a wall, I may not become the best tennis player out there if I'm only hitting against the wall. You've got to have that mentor or coach to help you level up. And if I had to start learning UX now, I would find the best master's program on the planet and I would go to it. I've heard really great things about University of Washington, but I would go to a UX program that was heavily focused in psychology and not so much in design or some of these other things. I would not do a boot camp, and I would definitely focus on psychology, and I would probably go for a master's. So that would be how I would do it if I did it over.
I agree with that. And I do like the program at University of Washington. Judith Ramey set that up. And she was stellar. I've known her for years. And the amount of bad information that's out there it boggles my mind. So even in the boot camps, they're putting out information that's not useful or usable. And you won't know that until you actually get out in the real world. And the same holds true for reading books. We said that. But one of the things that you're going to want to try to do is try to get a sense of what is working for people. And that is where, live streams like this, other live streams, just paying attention to LinkedIn really helps. Engage yourself with the community and learn more about all the differences in UX. So here's the thing about boot camps that I don't like. Their user research side of it is really thin, and they focus a lot more of the time and energy on the design side. If you want to be a designer, that's fine. Or run a survey. Yeah. Can't wait till my book is done.
So Larry, you're writing a book.
Yeah, I have this co-author, and she's really dragging me down. Anybody guess who it is? So, but anyway, if you really want to learn UX, make sure you understand what part of it you are most interested in. Is it design? Is it research? Is it task analysis? Is it usability testing? They all have their required talents and insights. So find out what you do best and focus on that part of it. Don't try to be a be-all to end-all UXer. Now, I was fortunate. When I started, nobody was doing it, so I did it all. But I found out that I really like the user research side. That's where I do my best work. I find insights that nobody else has found because I have a process that I learned from Don Norman that helps identify those insights. Now, some people like to design. I work with a couple of people who came out of boot camps and are great designers. So find what you like to do and focus on that.
And I'm going to take questions a little bit out of order today because I see some recurring themes popping up. So I am going to run a few questions out of the usual order, but I promise I see everybody's questions and all questions will be asked. Before I continue with the questions, let me just remind everybody, please subscribe here on the YouTube channel. I've turned off all the YouTube ads, so you should not be seeing ads whether or not you have YouTube Premium. If you see an ad, let me know. I've turned them off. And of course, ring that bell so you know when we're live. You can also go to deltacx.link/events to see when we're going to be live for different reasons. That's our event calendar. You can also join the Slack channel, which has almost 600 people, though I'd say 30 to 50 are active. Many of you are here in the chat room now. deltacx.link/join Slack. Of course, we have the tip jar available 24 hours a day. And if you want to have fun, we also have the live tip jar. If you do a super chat or super sticker while we're broadcasting, something will fall into the tip jar, and there will also be an emoji explosion. And gratitude from me because all donations go to the Deb Eats Delicious Cheese Fund. So I thank everybody for buying me some delicious cheese. Most recently, ricotta. Back to, we have a question that came in that seems to be a cousin of what we were just talking about. So I'm going to read that one out loud so we can kind of circle back. And also Yassine is saying, I get what Debbie said about masters in good universities, but sadly we don't live in the US and we can't get a loan for it. Yassine is from Morocco. So, but again, I still wouldn't necessarily, cheese, says Darren. So thank you, Darren. I still don't recommend the boot camps, Yassine. So there you go. May 11th is going to be my all boot camp stream. Everybody put it in your calendars. You've all asked me to look at curricula and poop on everybody, and I will. So here's the question we got. I'm a working web designer and I'm interested in moving towards CX UX design as a career. Would a certification program give me enough knowledge and qualification to get into the field, or would you recommend a full-fledged master's program? Oz! Thank you, Oz. Oz has donated to the channel. That is so sweet of you, Oz. Thank you for the cheese. Totally. That's enough money to buy some nice cheese here. Thank you, Oz. So Larry, in short, it was, will a certification program give people enough knowledge to move into CX or UX design, or do you recommend the master's degree?
I think a master's degree is much better because the certification program touches on a lot of different things, where a master's program is going to be much more focused. Again, find out what you want to do, research, testing, design, things like that, and then get a master's program in that if you can. The certifications are great for, fluffing your resume. I've seen people come out of boot camps, but the people that do best out of boot camp are the ones that take additional courses, seminars, webinars, things like that. The certification is just it's just a fluff on the boot camp approach. I know somebody who did go to the Nielsen Norman program, and we reviewed the curricula that he was exposed to, and I didn't see the value in it. Of course, he didn't have to pay for it; his fellowship paid for it. But and he, after a while, he didn't see the value out of it either. So I'm not crazy about certifications.
Yeah, me either, as everybody knows. And my boyfriend did Nielsen Norman, and basically he said it was enjoyable. It was great to learn from some of the greats. He did a 3-day interaction design course with Tog, but that's just 3 days of information, and it certainly wouldn't qualify him for an entry-level job. He's got a lot more practice to go, and that was about $7,000. So these things are not necessarily cheap, but remember, I have a whole episode on this. Go look for this in the Delta CX YouTube archives. It's I think it might be episode 78. Is 78? What is the value of a UX education? Find the one that says what is the value of a UX education. I go really deep on that one. So look for that episode. Might be 78. Ralitza says, it's actually an emoji of me doing that.
I think the real question here, though, that people are alluding to is, if not a boot camp, what should they do to learn? And I'm going to go back to my previous answer of read as much as you can. Try to figure out what's good and bad. You're going to have to do that on your own, or listen to Debbie, because she really does know. But the other is practice. Get involved with the startup communities, or anybody that wants some free education. Go to UX meetups, and you can learn a lot from those as well. So do what you can, but don't rely on the boot camps or the certification courses.
Yeah, I think the people who are less likely to get somewhere in the UX field are the ones I tend to see on LinkedIn who say, well, I did my 12-week boot camp. Where's my mofo job? And my thought is, you are not done. And if you're not going to be sorry to cover Larry up, I have to move this, a low ego action hero, if you're going to be a high ego weirdo about it, you are less likely to get that job. So thank you. Exactly. I know. I got to move it so it covers me, not you. A follow-up question from earlier. Somebody wanted to know, and I'll see if it's on the screen. Here it is. Yassine wanted to know, what are some of the crappy books we should avoid at all costs? You mentioned there were crappy books out there. Darren said there were crappy books out there. Are we comfortable naming names, or are we going to pass on this question?
Anything that says lean.
Oh, yes, I agree. Whoa! That summed that up. Boom, pow, etc. Yes. Oh, that was good. That was refreshing. That made my day instantly better. Thank you.
I guess the other question is, what are some good books to suggest? Obviously, Design of Everyday Things, Steve Krug's books. One of my favorite to recommend is Task Analysis for User Interface Design by Joanne Hackos and Jenny Reddish. It is a how-to guide on how to do good user research task analysis. And once you understand that book, it's a bit thick. Then when you look at other books, you realize how thin they are in process, and how most of the stuff out there is going to teach you how to copy somebody else's work really, really well or really quick. But it's not going to give you the tools necessary to find insightful nuggets of wisdom.
Kayleen likes my F sharp. Thank you. I wasn't shooting for F sharp. It just ended up there because he said, don't read books that say lean. And everybody Google Darren Hood book list. And he's got a great list online of books that he recommends. I finally made it on there. Thank you, Darren. So you can check that out. There was another follow-up question that came in that said, Larry, how did bootcamp graduates get a chance to work with you?
Interestingly enough, we just hired one of about 8 months ago, and her resume came in, and it didn't pass the filters because she didn't have a year of experience. So it ended up, in the pile of, well, maybe. But I looked at her resume just because I look at them all, and it said that she had worked in industry as a business analyst and had a psychology degree. And I thought, UX is highly dependent on psychology. So that's one of the things that's missing in boot camps. They don't teach you human psychology. Think about it. User experience. How is that not psychology? And a lot of times boot camps are just telling you how to draw shiny things. So anyway, we looked at this resume and I thought, I got to talk to her. And within 15 minutes, I knew she was the right candidate. So we had other good candidates to choose from, but she had a psychology background and had worked, in industry and presented herself well. She was confident. And she also, suggested that she was a new UXer, so there's a lot to learn. So don't expect great things out of her. But we've learned to expect that out of her now. So
I think it's just bizarre that I just got a sales email from User Interviews, who I started out by complaining about, saying how great it is to recruit participants on their platform, and I'm struggling with them. And my natural reaction, other than pressing unsubscribe, is not today, Satan. So if anybody has any suggestions for competitors to User Interviews, I need a panel that focuses on Americans that preferably will let me run my own survey through my own survey software and not make me use the built-in survey for the panel system. If you have any recommendations, please send them to me privately or write them here. I need some, I seriously need some help. Steele says, look out for speed over quality. I agree. Darren says, yes, I refer to advanced UX operation as design psychology. Well, hopefully that gets us all somewhere. Moving through the questions, we have another question that says, I'm working on building a case for a design system, and I'm interested in your perspectives on that. Any insight into aligning design and engineering?
Okay, so a design system, we used to call them templates, a
Component
while ago,
library.
but it is right, a component library. Now, a design system can be beneficial once you've got the right system in place, and it all depends on your type of product, your interaction models, your users, et cetera, et cetera. But what I don't like are design systems that are just, don't swap me with that.
It's spring. It's clearly spring here.
So design systems that just copy existing ones, like Google's Material Designer, any of the others, I find fault with all of those existing ones. They are UI designs. They are not UX design systems. So make sure you develop it as a UX design system. So what's the difference between a UX design system and a UI design system? A UX design system takes into account what the user's psychology might be. For instance, accordion design has the arrow on the far right of the accordion list.
Not an X.
Not an X. I don't know how many of you saw that LinkedIn discussion. But here's the thing. Things to the far right, especially if it's a very wide accordion, people tend not to see. Now, they're going to see the controls if they're just to the left of the label of that accordion or drop down or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So, the user psychology tests have proven that people perform better with the actions right next to the label, not separated all the way halfway across the page. So those are the kind of things you want to think of as you develop your design system. Now, the hard part about that is that because they're based on user psychology, sometimes it's more difficult to explain to the engineers why it is the way it is. But you just have to develop that rapport, and working along with them, doing your final UI, UX design, UI design with them in the sprint can help transfer that knowledge or that insight to them. But whatever you do, don't let the engineers design. Every engineer has a different way of designing. And I see that so often. I see products where there's no clear interaction model, where one part of it has one interaction model, another part has a competing interaction model. And it's obvious they were developed by two different engineers or developers in sprints. So that's one of the telltale signs of a sprint designed product, is that there's no overarching single design system, if you will. So a design system can help do that, but don't let the engineers tell you how to design it or what to put on the page.
Yeah, and another tip that I have for design systems, because there's a lot I do like about them, is just to make sure that engineers know that they still need their CX and UX practitioners. Sometimes engineers think, well, I've got a design system, I just have to put these pieces onto a page or onto a screen, and boom, color forms, or what were those things we had when we were little, where you put the sticky thing on top of Charlie Brown. Anyway, I'm forgetting what those were called. Someone will remember, someone my age or older. So we have to just make sure we socialize with engineers that just because there is a component library or a UI kit or a design system doesn't mean they can circumvent us and just place things wherever they want on the page, however they want. So let's jump to the next question. And I do see all the questions, including Ralitsa, so I'm going to add that to the bottom of the list. Kayleen had a follow-up question to what you were just talking about. She said, what company were or are you the hiring manager for?
I am not the hiring manager. I'm just the senior UX person there, and I work with the Air Force at the Air Force Academy, and they have it's called the CyberWorks office, but we help different departments of the Air Force and the Department of Defense in general break down problems that they're having into its constituent parts that we can then figure out how we're going to solve. So a recent problem that we worked on had to do with this rescue radio. And it was so poorly designed that even the engineers couldn't use it. And so think about what it's going to be like for a pilot who has to punch out of her jet, parachute down, break her ankle, and then try to call for rescue while she's surrounded by the enemy who don't know she's there yet. So things like that. We've worked on, dashboards. We worked on missile warning systems. I mean, the list goes on, but I'm not the hiring manager. I have a really great manager that takes care of all of that, and I work with him.
Marisol says, super interesting. Yes, it is. So this was Jason's question that first he tried asking me when you weren't here, but now you're here. And it says, when Larry mentions things like some cognitive knowledge is required to perform a task, is he referring to the literature from Dan Diper or David Benyon, like task analysis for knowledge descriptions, or is it his own variation of a different task analysis?
It's my own variation, although there are some similarities. What we're looking for when we do task analysis is what knowledge can we expect the users to have. For instance, I did a lot of work on medical devices. You can expect nurses to have a certain amount of procedural information, professional information in their head, some knowledge they have about how to do a task. But there is certain other information that you recognize they need in order to perform a task, but they're not likely to have, such as they don't know all of the drug interactions for these different medications that they're giving. That responsibility is left to the pharmacist. But how do you make sure that the nurse isn't going to try to give two medicines to a patient that might have an adverse reaction. So that's where we identify the knowledge gap between what the users are expected to know, but what they and what they need to know, and how do we develop a system that bridges that knowledge for the user to make sure that nurses don't give incompatible medicines.
Thank you. And Jason, I hope you're still here, and I hope that helps. Kayleen had asked this earlier when we were talking about trying to get some sample work maybe from a startup, and her question was, where do the startup communities hang out? Are they on LinkedIn?
I don't believe there's so much on LinkedIn, but there are meetup groups for startup communities within, major metropolitan areas. I know Boulder has a huge one. Denver has one. Colorado Springs has a very vibrant startup community. And that's where I live. And I've been participating there. And after a few years, I became known as the UX guy, because every meeting, every month, I would get up there and say, if anybody wants any help, with their UX, I give, a free hour of my time. And it's amazing how many people took advantage of that. So look around, look for meetups. They have these things called pitch nights where young startups try to pitch to potential advisors or investors. And you can meet people there. That's what the Colorado Springs startup community does. They have their pitch night. And that's fun to go to because you can pick up a lot of insights. And as people are describing their product and how they're trying to solve a problem, you can start to learn how people think. And, it's just more exposure for you.
Hey, we just sold a book.
You must have liked my answer.
Yeah, now we just have to write it. And Kayleen, there's
Yes.
other ways to connect with startups. I would say maybe look around AngelList. Now, sometimes those are real part-time or full-time jobs, but I think it's angellist.co are startups who are looking for people to join. And they're usually startups looking for investors. So they might not have a lot of money. They might be offering you little or nothing, or the promise of future shares, which is little or nothing. But you can certainly find some people there and reach out to them and see if you can look for startups that interest you, and maybe just write to them and ask if they have UX people, or look on LinkedIn, put name of company, UX, and see if anybody comes up. So try something like that. Hey guys, we've got a few more minutes left. So if you have any last questions, please put them in the chat room or send them to deltacx.link/ask, and I will keep an eye on those coming in. And so far, they are not coming in, so we might be done with questions. But we've got one last one, and it's actually from super friend Ralitza, who asks, in the context of UX, what is your opinion on Scrum and Agile in general, in the context of UX?
Well, keep in mind that Scrum and Agile are and were developed as development processes, not UX processes. And I think that they fit into UX at the end of the UX processes. You cannot make UX a Scrum or Agile process. And the companies that do don't really get the benefit of UX. I'm not sure how you're asking that question, so I'm not really sure if I'm answering it. But I try to make sure that my clients understand that I will interact with their Scrum team or their Agile team at the end of my effort. But they cannot expect me to do, 6 weeks of user research within a 2 or 3 week sprint that they normally have. You just can't get there. So UX is part waterfall because you have to do that user research up front, and part Agile, if you will, where you can start breaking it down and do it in cycles and iterate on it. But sometimes their sprint cycles are so short that you really can't get enough, have enough time to get good information out of it. So for instance, I had one client that did 3-week sprints. You can't arrange enough of the right users in that amount of time and perform a test and then redesign and have that ready for them before the end of that sprint.
Right.
So, making UX fit into Agile is difficult, but it can be done as long as the company recognizes that some of the work has to be done up front and does not fit in an Agile sprint.
And I believe that we should be making Agile fit into UX. Who said we had to fit into them?
How come business and sales and marketing don't have to fit in Agile?
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? And business and marketing and sales also don't have to do sticky note workshops where everybody guesses at their specialties.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Ralitza added a little more color to her question. She said, it's purely a curiosity thing because I'm a former Scrum Master, Agile Coach, Project Manager, and I've seen the challenges. I know some of the arguments and wanted to hear how people are dealing.
Well, you're more knowledgeable about that than I am. I'd be interested to have a conversation with you about that to see from your perspective how you see UX.
Maybe we'll write a book.
Or at least have her on the show.
Gonna write. Yeah. Were you on the show? You were on the show. I think she was on the show for Apprentices. We'll have to have her back for what the hell should we do about Agile and UX. I think we could do that. I think maybe later this year. I'm thinking maybe fall or winter. I predict that will happen. That's just a guess. Okay, I see a question from Elijah and a question from Kayleen, and then I think we're going to have to wrap it up because we're going to run out of time. So just know that I'm putting those on the list right now, and let's start with Elijah's question. In terms of scalability, how do you do more user research at large scales? Just hire more researchers, or are there other things that can be done?
If you have to do it at scale, you almost always have to have more researchers. And the benefit and the value add of more researchers is that everybody goes out and does a few user observations and then come back and share their knowledge. And so then you start to develop different questions. Then they go back out and do it again. So there's this spread out, diverge, converge opportunity that helps bring in more of the insights and helps you fine-tune what you're looking for in your observations.
Okay, super. And what might be our last question, and Shannon says works for developers, not so much for UX. Kayleen asks, Larry, what do you think we can do to reverse the trend of lean, misinformed, shiny UX? When do you think it'll happen? I keep seeing more bad boot camps and misguided newbies believing them.
The flippant answer would be wait till my book comes out. But no, I think what's going to really make a difference is when enough true UX practitioners who are following user-centered design processes and are doing observational research rather than guessing in a conference room start to create a better quality of end result. But see, it's amazing. Right now, for instance, in conversion rates for consumer websites, the average consumer conversion rate is 2 to 3%. And unfortunately, it's that 3%, wow, that's great. And a lot of companies accept that. Well, if you follow Don Norman's processes, I've used it and I've created websites that have 10, 15, 20, 25% conversion rates. And it's not magic, it's following a process. And I think when there's more of those successes that they can say, look, this process created 25%. The process you're using created 2.5%. That is 10 times, better to follow the right process. Only after we have enough of those can we start to get more people to realize there is bad UX and there's good UX. Now, how do we tell the difference?
Yeah, and sometimes that's a little bit of the not great side of marketing or marketers, because since 2 to 3% are average conversion rates, sometimes marketing says, well, like, well, what can we do to go from 2.5 to 3%? And I think they're aiming so low, and sometimes they choose desperate dark patterns like get more people on the mailing list and stuff like that. And they don't make the checkout better. They don't make the product page better. They don't make the search results better. They're just trying to figure out how to band-aid this stuff to get that extra 0.5%.
Yeah, they set low standards and then fail to achieve them.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Larry, we have a question that I don't think we know the answer to. When is our book coming out?
Oh, about 5 years ago.
Okay, well, I didn't know you then, so I can't claim that we've taken that long on it.
Well, the interesting thing is you ask really hard questions and I have to think about them and write up answers to them. So stop asking those hard questions.
Damn it, I'm the worst. It's, as my boyfriend likes to say, I'm a terrible person. So about himself, but he's not. He's lovely. So when is the book out? I don't know. I originally thought it would be out a couple of times already, and then we kind of looked at it and said, I think we need to go in a different direction, or I don't think we explained this as well as we could have, or we would debut secretly part of it on the show and it would crash and burn and we go, oh, we got to fix that. So I don't know. The fall? I would love to have it out in the fall.
I was hoping summer.
Okay. The pressure is on.
We'll see.
Yeah. The ball is in your court now, but as soon as you send it to me, I've got to, we send it back and forth like that. So answer is we don't totally know. We didn't give ourselves a hard deadline. I think I don't know about Larry, but I would rather write the best book than the fastest book. So there you go.
Oh, pshaw.
Quality over speed, Larry. Come on, let me tell you more about it. It's really good. We have a question from Oz. I think we have time for it, and then we'll have to wrap up. And it looks like this. Is it a low standard when 3% is deemed success in marketing? Can marketing realistically shoot for 50%? I mean, we were just talking about conversion rates.
Well, I have a pretty good track record of, getting conversion rates in the double digits. So 10%, 20%, 25%. Think of it this way. 99.99% of the people that go to a website are there on purpose. They are there because they have a problem to solve. And if you can't sell to more than 3% of the people who visit to your site because they're there on purpose to specifically look at your service or product, you got serious problems. They're there on purpose. Now, if you can connect with that purpose, you're going to sell to 25%. And not only is 25% good, but what if you have a commodity? What is your repeat sales like? So the website that I worked on that had 25%, they have about 75% repeat buyers. So that, those are the type of numbers you should be striving for. But it's amazing how many people don't believe it can be done. So many poor designers have set the bar so low that when somebody does come along and say, hey, I can give you double-digit conversion rates, they say, no way, it can't be done.
Right.
We'll be happy with 3%. So to your point, Oz, yeah, there's a low standard that people have tacitly accepted, and that's unfortunate. We need to change that vernacular. So 3% is not good, it is bad. So it'll take a while.
What was the statistic you had on the average close rate or conversion rate for used car salespeople? Is that
Do you
27?
realize that the average 28%? So if the average website converts at 2.8% and used car salesmen can close a deal 28% of the time, that means used car salesmen, as bad as they are 10 times better than the average website. Think of that.
Yeah, so how would marketing respond to hearing us say that 3% is a low bar and we can do better? I think they would say, no, it can't be done, or hey, it would be great if we could get 3%.
More of the
I don't
latter.
know.
That's what I've heard.
What have
That's
you
what
heard?
I've heard many
Okay.
times before. If we could get to 3%, that would be great, because that is oftentimes a 20% increase in sales for them, just to get to 3% conversion rate. So they look at it very differently.
Yeah, and we know they look at it differently because their response to a lot of stuff is to try to get everybody on mailing lists. And I always say, hands up, who went to a website today hoping to get on their mailing list? We
Well, the
know
other
that there are
thing,
tasks. People have tasks.
right. And so, there's two aspects of increasing your conversion rate, either improving the conversion rate of the site or increasing the traffic. So eventually you're looking at the absolute numbers of sales. And if you have a 2% converting site and you double the number of people going to it, you're going to double your sales. So that's how marketers look at it. How do we drive more traffic? What they don't understand is that if you do drive more traffic and people are frustrated with the site, that word gets out too, and that unbrands your website.
So
That's one of
Oz,
the things I learned that's one of the things I learned as a product manager, is the difference between marketing and sales and conversion.
And Oz replied that he'd rather deal with a bad website than an asshole bully used car salesman. They have higher conversions because they cajole and hassle people. I would say a lot of websites are unfortunately starting to do the same. Not even starting. It's been around forever, Oz. That's why we always talk about dark patterns and about things that interrupt people's tasks. I'm always talking about the four horsemen of bad CX and UX. So sure, many used car sales people can be jerks and use some crappy tactics, but I think unfortunately a lot of websites are using some of those tactics as well, just in the digital version. What was the one we heard about recently? Without naming names, there was a famous politician who was raising money and had a bunch of checkboxes on their site that if you uncheck this box and don't give a monthly donation, you support the other side. And people saw that and were like, oh my God, I don't support the other side. And then they were getting bills from this politician for amounts of money they didn't expect because of all the weird things they didn't realize they had opted into. The tactics at this point are the same. Some are digital and some are down at the used car lot. So I don't think either side is looking very good right now, but that's just me. Larry, we needed to wrap up because I've got another call coming up. Any final words on any topics you want to mention? And of course, how can people find you and follow you and get in touch?
I'm on LinkedIn. Just look for me on LinkedIn, Larry Marine. That's probably the best way. I'm on Twitter too, but I don't really pay much attention to that. Too many trolls on Twitter. But I'd like to hear from folks. Ask me questions, post things on LinkedIn, and hopefully I can respond to them in time.
There's always time. Thank you for your service and your responding. So I will wrap this up. Remember, tomorrow we're continuing our micro lesson, or really finishing it, to talk about writing a report. I don't know what I'm going to do for that one, but we're going to riff it and we're going to come up with something. And then I don't think I have a lot of podcasts planned coming up, which is okay because I also have like 60 to 80 hour weeks. So we'll figure something out. But check the events calendar. But thanks to everybody for joining, and of course thanks to Larry, and please wear a mask and be safe, and I'm going to play us out of here. Kayleen's giving us lots of smiley faces, which I assume will explode on top of us any second now. Here we go. Thank you, Kayleen. Thanks again, Larry. See everybody soon. Bye. Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.